It's the 19th of April 2022. I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the nuclearproctologist.org, and I run the Nuclear Scumbag show for many, many years. You can call in or call 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's get it on. We got so much to cover. My goodness, we got a poll, in case anybody's counting. Should nuclear professors face crimes against humanity charges or similar for turning kids into sadistic demons? Sadistic demons, because there's not enough room there to fit everything in. But these are schools of mass destruction. These professors are teaching the children to come out and lie to everybody and themselves in the name of the nuclear genocide machine. And the children, of course, are very vulnerable to these people, these predators. These are predators we're talking about. And so the appropriate answer is yes, 100%. Kind of warms me bones, that's what that does. We got t-shirts. Colette called me up and asked me what I'd done with my t-shirt with the whales. Save the whales and ban nuclear power. And save the whales when you actually go there. And they're that's the lowest prices I can go. I think I make $1. Well, I make $1 profit on these shirts. Save the whales, ban nuclear power plants. So I put long shirts in there also, and just two types, and t-shirts. That's your front shot. Both of those shirts are different pictures. And on the back of it, this one has the explosion of the whale. And that was taken of this whale tail here when I was on the west coast of Vancouver Island. I also have a clip there. Let's play that little clip. Crazy, right? Zoe lost her mind about right there, started barking. She was pretty pissed off with that whale. And just to remind everybody, links to these t-shirts are at the bottom of the description. I put them there about an hour ago. There's other t-shirts. I might as well bring that up while we're here, because I rarely talk about that, do I? So you can also get t-shirts saved with no pictures, just blank. Save the insects, ban nuclear power plants. Those pictures, t-shirts are available. You can get full print of that same stuff. That's a great print, by the way. Save the planet from climate change. Ban nuclear or close all nuclear power plants. You can get covers for your iPhones. That's reactor 3 to your left, reactor 4 to your right, and that's the real pictures. The fake ones I'll show to you actually coming up in a moment. You can also get that with a full t-shirt And you can say, well, does that look like 190-foot buildings to anybody? So there's all kinds of stuff there, mugs and different colors. All the shirts and stuff is different colors. And there's all kinds of backpacks and glasses and hats, you name it. I got all kinds of weird stuff at this site. Stop the chemotherapy, cancer, genocide. Use DCA. That's a great shirt right there. And mugs, right? You can get it with mugs. Because you can cure cancer with DCA. And you can get it on Amazon.com. It's just a mineral. You don't need a prescription. It's the same thing as zinc or potassium or magnesium. You know, like it's just a mineral, right? You don't need. There's no patent on it. You don't need a prescription for it. We got all kinds of stuff. I can't possibly get to. Close all nuclear power plants surrounded by farms now movement. That's such an important subject. We actually had a poll on it last night. People don't understand the dangers when they go to the supermarkets. And so we got all kinds of stuff where you buy it. I don't have anything to do with this. I just design it, and then I get a little percentage, and they pay me 10 days later. So they take their time with everybody. So you got to pay for shipping with any of this. It'll calculate it all automatically. It's a different site. I don't have anything to do with the money. They pay me after the delivery, basically. And so there's all kinds of sweatpants. I'm busy boy. I put up 3 different style. I like these full-legged, closed UK Bradwell nuclear power plant, genocide by radioactive farm food. So this stuff, if you don't, it's so hard to get this conversation started on Fukushima and the problems with it. Here's the best ways to get the conversation. T-shirts and leggings and you name it. This is the proper way to get that conversation, because to save the whales, ban nuclear power. Because people are going like, what are you talking about? And just very rarely will you see Dana Durnford or a nuclear proctologist on any of this. I just want it out there for conversation, right? Ban nuclear power to save the whales. Yeah, that's hilarious. Anyway, let's get at it. We got so much news. Not getting anything done here. Nobody's bought T-shirts. And I think we only sold in the last month since we started this. We sold 3 shirts or something. Pretty pathetic. But Colette was looking for a couple. And we got a lot to cover. And so just brought the subject back up. I might as well share it with everybody, otherwise people don't know it exists. Fukushima just had an earthquake on land, 60 miles deep. What they call a low 5 in the Japan seismic intensity scale of 7. Say 5.4 multiplied by 1.428 to get the conversion number for what we would call it. On land. We'll cover that coming up in a little tiny bit. Fukushima, see, it's such a weird, because people can't wrap their mind around it. Explosion of Fukushima Unit 1, 3, and 4, but also 2, they just didn't acknowledge it here, may have caused, and probably the common spent fuel pool in Reactor 6, right? Because they released 736 pictures last year and redacted the reactors in all the pictures. What was the point of releasing the pictures? See? Particularly, why was the common spent fuel pool in Reactor 6 pixelated, redacted, so you couldn't actually see? It was bizarre. You can find it in my playlist. Explosion of Fukushima 1, 3, and 4 may have caused the inventory, which is the reactor core and the fuel pools with decades of reactor cores, nuclear rods to be lost from the spent fuel pools. So that's reactor 1 they were talking about. Here's the explosion of it. So that's a significant explosion. These are, what you're looking at is 190-foot buildings. And one of them just disappeared. Well, the top of it disappeared. The caught fire, blew up. But then the reactor core obviously melted down. You can't destroy the building without everything melting down. Also, whatever stayed behind. Whatever wasn't ejected. We may not be able to live in Japan someday. The radiation is going to be flowing. And flowing being, it covers the entire planet. So imagine how bad Japan is. This is a model of plutonium-239 dispersal, not based on the entire lost inventories by any shape or forms. This was reactor 2. This liquefied, burned continuously for several days. So fuel pool's gone. Some of it is gone through the side of the building, but a lot of it actually went China syndrome in reactor 2. But it also sent a plume over the entire planet. To your right, I'm just trying to get you up to speed on this subject. The fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. Each of these buildings. And this was reactor 3, a mixed oxide, very dangerous reactor mixture. Plutonium, reclaimed uranium, plutonium has already gone through a chain reaction. It's a despicable thing to do, really. Just the processing it, making it, creating it. There's only a couple of countries that freaks with it, and these countries don't give a shit about anything on the planet, including themselves. So obviously that building doesn't exist, but officially they claim they got the fuel out of the pools at the top of the buildings last year, but it doesn't exist. But all the media perpetrated that lie. So this was it detonating. Remember, that's 190-foot buildings you're seeing in the bottom of the screen. That's actually the fuel pools and the reactor cores falling out of the sky you're looking at. Also the plumes. This is France's model. You can see, this is a 16-day model when it stops. You can see the plume covering the entire planet. The entire planet. That's a terrifying, horrifying model. And it's only based on venting. It's not based on the lost inventories. This, again, is reactor 3. Reactor 3, see, there's just a stump left. But this is the official picture. They're pretending they're at the top of the pool in those red depictions. And that's apparently them, but the building doesn't even exist. Here's the original footage. Reactor 3 to your right, reactor 4 to your left. So reactor 4 to your left, all four sides are similar. So it's completely gone. So they cooked up this scam here. This is the 6 steps. At 6 step, it looks like that. The structure, bizarre structure they got there, doesn't physically touch the building. But then they pretend, once they put the covers on it, they pretend it looks like this. So they figured the equivalent of at least 20 nuclear cores, which explains why these people to the right are pretending they're in the pool above the building to your left. So you're in real danger, and these people are trying to, and have successfully, deceived and manipulated you. So the plume you're looking at, this is an extinction event for insects and birds and animals, mammals, bacteria, flora, fauna, 8 million species, humanity. And this plume brings 1,800 illnesses to animals and insects and birds and humans. It's a 1,000,000-year crime. It's an extermination plume. It's a doomsday plume, as we like to call them. That is the doomsday plume. This model is only a 20-day model. death machines there in Japan are still hemorrhaging radiation. Every time you have an earthquake, you're worried it's going to send out more and more plumes. I have so much news to cover, shocking. And the only reason, what I mean by that, when I say I got a lot of news to cover, it generally means every single story they told lies. We're just going to point it out, move to the next story because you can't keep up with it. You can't keep. I'd have to, if I turn on the cameras when I wake up in the morning and start scrolling through the nuclear news cycles, that's what I should be doing, see, because that takes 10, 12 hours. So I'll be doing a live show for 10 or 12 hours, reading the articles, highlighting it, screen capturing it, to go in that night and tell you the story. Try to, because it's complicated. So it'd be better if I just done a 10-hour show, do it live instead of doing these compact shows, presentations that I do each night. Because that's what they are. They're compact compared to what I'm abused every day by the nuclear industry. Nuclear reactors won't fix Britain's energy crisis. Voices. Assholes. And the government's lack of transparency proves it. Oh, somebody actually swatted back. That's weird. Hey, California grid just ran on a record 97% renewable energy. Last week, a week before, we were covering these scumbags out of California that were claiming that nuclear was the death, or renewables was the death of California, and not even rolling blackouts for the rest of our lives. But then you see, all of a sudden, what's really going on there. The nuclear industry can't compete, so the nuclear industry is out there bad-mouthing everything that's considered a competition. That's what the nuclear industry sabotages, everything that it considers as a competition. International Energy Agency sees renewables overtaking fossil fuels and nuclear by 2026. In just 4 years. They expect to have 4,800 gigawatt of new energy online. 4,800 gigawatts, which is equal to around 5,500 nuclear power plants. So in 4 years' time of new energy starting now in 2022, January, they expect it to leap and bounds that much. The International Energy Agency, not to be confused with the International Atomic Scumbag Degenerate United Nations Agency, also known as the IAEA, but the IEA. The United Nations is just a corporation, but it's 195 militaries. It's the military-industrial complex. And their little pet mouthpiece is NATO. For the first time, wind power eclipsed both coal and nuclear in the U.S. Woo! They're getting stomped everywhere they go. The best way to save nuclear scientists from drowning is keep your foot on their head. Put your windmills on top of the mountains where the wind blows all the time. What they want to do is stick it in your communities and drive you nuts and turn you into an advocate for everything but wind, see? Yeah, we got windmills right in our communities. Horrible. Yeah, because it's in your... Don't put coal plants in your cities and coal looks great all of a sudden. Coal plumes don't cover the planet. Radiation does. U.S. is set to launch $6 billion effort. $6 billion effort. And nuclear just doesn't work in the same sentence, does it? What are you going to do with $6 billion between 100 reactors? It's ludicrous. They'll spend that on coffee money in about 6 weeks. They probably tip that every couple of years. The nuclear industry has no concept of what money is. It really doesn't. Hey, here, if you think it don't get any stranger, France's EDF could sell renewables. I didn't even know France had renewables. To focus on nuclear. And because France had the Paris Accord in 2015, where they're supposed to, the whole world is out there promoting nuclear, or supposed to be promoting renewables, and France is like, just don't tell everybody. They're crazy. So we just had a 5.4 quake on a Japanese scale. So when it says M, it's supposed to be magnitude, which is supposed to be the Richter scale, on a scale of 10. But it's not a scale of 10, it's a scale of 5.4. That's a problem. We got a poll tonight, that's a problem. I like problems. So 5, well, let's go backwards. So what you got to do, right, the Japanese scale, is you got to take 10, divide it by 7, and you got, I screwed that up, did I? Come on, Dana, get it together. How did I ever screw that up? Take 10 and divide it by 7, and you get 1.428. Now you multiply that by 5.4 for the Japanese seismic intensity scale, and you convert it into our scale, which is a 7.7. So a 7.7 on land, that's significant, isn't it? Particularly when you got, as I just showed you earlier, multiple nuclear meltdowns that are very fragile remains that you're worried about starting a recriticality, a chain reaction, sending plumes to finish the extermination going on our planet. An earthquake with a magnitude of 5.4 struck Ibaraki and Fukushima Prefecture, as well as other parts of Japan this morning, but no damage has been reported, which, of course, the last earthquake, March the 16th, he said no damage. A headline coming up says 19,000 houses were damaged. 240 people were injured. 3 were killed. So originally they always come out, nuclear power is okay. These are like 1 square mile areas with spots there where there's no go zones, for goodness sakes. You can't quantify those assertions. But the quake registered lower 5, which is a 5.4. 5.5 or 5.6 is upper 5, and lower 5 is 4.9. 5.49, right? Which is a 7 point, which is a significant earthquake. On land, right by fragile reactors, basically, because geologically, and so you can see the scale to your right. So the blue and the yellow, rather, is the lower 5, and there's no upper numbers. So that's right by the reactors again, which is what they done on last year on February the 13th, this year on March the 16th. The whole industry is lunatic. And they gave us GPSs of the latitude and longitude. There was one report today that actually gave us a normal distance. Oh, it's 15 miles northeast of blah, 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 right? Which is, like, it's been years since they actually done something like that. They always give you the GPS because they don't want to use the words Fukushima if they can avoid it. It's like going to find and type in Fukushima nuclear power plant meltdowns with an S and see how many mainstream media talked about that. So this was the shit for brain Google map, scumbag Google, degenerate Google Maps, aka Alphabet, aka public relation genocide control freak, idiot machine. So you see the scoop of land? So Iwaki is right here. Fukushima nuclear power plant, my finger's pointing right at it. So you can see that general scoop up there too. So where the blue meets the yellow, that seems to be correlate where Fukushima nuclear power plants are too. Where the blue meets the yellow, very light yellow, and then darker yellow here, right? Who knows, because they're gone into... there is quite a bit of media reported on it, which means it's significant. Inland part of Fukushima at a depth about 93 kilometers, which is 60 miles. This was another media, showed us this particular one. Again, they didn't show you Fukushima in the media. I had to go to shitty Google and get it. They showed us Naraha. That's a spot you don't want to be eating any food from anywhere in these prefectures. So it's a 60 mile deep on land nearby where they got, because Doiny is closer, right? The Doiny site. And the Doiny site has very fragile reactor buildings that were damaged and flooded also. Doiny was the evil twin of the Fukushima. And this is evil Google. Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. I was trying to get Hirano right here. The earthquake was just right around here. So they purposely try their best to confuse you. Quake registered lower 5 in Japan's seismic intensity scale of 7. And so again, right, you got to scale that up to the rest of the planet's scale. Taiwan uses that scale too, but Taiwan has a notorious degenerate nuclear industry there, and they've had major quakes there. Like, holy shit, earthquakes in Taiwan in the last 20 years, like catastrophic earthquakes in that island. And the nuclear industry played it down. They do that with all earthquakes now, and do the same thing where they use a scale of 7 instead of gutting up and using a real scale like everybody else on the planet. The tremor, aka earthquake, originated in the inland part of Fukushima at a depth about 90 kilometers. Inland, again, they're not giving you specifically, which is what you would normally do, right? Update, that was a few hours ago. Strong quake hit Eastern Japan. Some bullet trains were delayed, but not for very long, apparently. 5.4, no revision. But again, there was no USGS reports. This was just out of Japan only, which is bizarre. Taiwan. So Taiwan, crazy Taiwan, just randomly, Taiwan was better than the other 50, or worse than the other 55 countries. 55 countries, this is a model of Japan, 55 countries banned food from 14 prefectures, and you should for a couple of thousand years anyway. No offense to the Japanese, but you've been captured by the despicable industry. You don't need to poison everybody worldwide. So a lot of people think that Fukushima food, they don't realize 55 countries banned 14 prefectures, the foods. The industry whittled that away pretty quick over the last few years. That's what they do, right? They put the nuclear industry in key positions in the countries with restrictions, and then lift restrictions. This is what Taiwan just done. To join a trade pact, Taiwan said, we'll import food from every Fukushima prefecture if you let us join a trade organization. What that means is they'll poison all day long, day in, day out, every single meal, every person in the country. So a couple of well-placed politicians and corporations can save a few bucks on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the new one that's created to do exactly that, to poison the entire planet with lethal, deadly food. Because you don't buy butter by the spoonful. You buy it in a block. You don't buy rice by the pound or by the meal. You're buying it by the pounds, right? So as you're eating this in increments over time, you're bioaccumulating the radiation, more and more and more radiation. The radiation, bad. Japan strawberries. Now, this is focused Taiwan, who we've called out who knows how many times over the years. Japanese strawberry excess pesticide residue seized at the border. But none of the radioactive food had no issues. So this story was about downplaying the radiation and worry about the pesticide. That's what it's about, right? Because they just started importing food after 11 years. And this was done randomly by a couple of well-placed degenerates in government down there. It's outrageous. You can't have a future if you continue to sit in silence and let this happen. You can't have a future for anybody or any species on the planet. This is not a way forward. This is suicide. This is Jim Jones stuff. Eat the radioactives. Drink the radioactive punch. What was it they done? They were drinking punch bowl. There's another word for it. I can't remember. Jim Jones, anyway. Timber. Dennis, Obsolete Optics. Hi, everybody. Dana Nasana, Thinker. James Lucet. Hey, buddy. Patrick. I need to call Steve Young today, and I forgot about it. I haven't stopped. Skawilla. Yeah, hi there. Oh, Stephen Young was here. Look at that. Colette. Yeah, thanks, Colette. Yeah, that was a good video of the whale's tail. Colette's when I ordered up the shirts. Taiwan, because it gets the conversation going, see? Taiwan on February the 21st lifted the ban on food imports from 5 Japanese prefectures affected by the nuclear disaster that has been in place for 11 years. Fukushima, where the disaster occurred, neighboring Guma. But Chiba's not neighboring. Chiba's 200 kilometers away, right alongside of Tokyo. And Tokyo should have been included, right? It should have been gone all the way to Osaka, which is 600 kilometers or something past south of Fukushima. Should ban the food from Earth. But ground zero, Japan, you don't want to eat the food from Japan. Like, under no circumstances. If you know anybody, nuclear scientists or nuclear academics that come to your house, I got a good gag for you. Invite them over and their wife and that, and their children and everything, and feed them rice, and don't say nothing to them. After the rice, that's the best stuff. I got that. I ordered that in from Fukushima Prefecture online from a place called... Just pick any spot around a nuclear power plant and watch them all go to the bathroom and throw up, trying to get it out of him. He'll literally defecate right where he's to if you do that to him. He'll take his children to the hospital and actually get them pumped out. 5.3 magnitude earthquake hits Japan. So Koriyama, you don't want to eat no food from Koriyama either. Koriyama is brutal radiation. And Niigata, which is on the east side, you don't want to eat any food from that. Tokyo. Koriyama should have been evacuated. The Fukushima Medical University set the standards for radiation poison for external only. They didn't bother counting internal doses. You really got to be some special kind of evil to do something like that. You really got to be some sadistic, subhuman species to do stuff like that. The epicenter of, well, that's nuclear, Dana. I know, I'm just saying. I'm trying to expand it a little bit. The epicenter of the earthquake occurred. This was unusual. This is extraordinary. This is the first time in years and years and years I've seen him say something like this. That the earthquake occurred 13 miles northeast of Daigo, Japan, at a depth of 60 miles. Jeez, how hard was that? So all these years, for the last number of years, just randomly Japan stopped reporting like that. And they were like, is that latitude or longitude? Which means I got to go look everything up all the time, right? But this is how everybody else on the planet does it. So why did Japan? This is rare. I'll put that on the big screen because nobody believed it. Dana's photoshopped it. No, I didn't. Look at it. Go read the story. You'll see I didn't Photoshop it. It's real, man. So the quake reached an intensity 5 out of 7. It's actually 5.4. 0.4 matters when it comes to earthquakes, scumbags. On its scale in Ibaraki. Hard cases, you ask me. No tsunami warning was issued. Really? You don't issue tsunami warning for earthquakes that are way inland? Wow, I'm shocked. Sarcasm, folks. It's been a long day, trust me. The Fukushima nuclear power, good day. We got a lot of projects done today. Those tools are kicking ass. Nothing yet has stumped me. Knock on wood. Fukushima nuclear power plant, Ibaraki Atomic Power Station, did not report any issues. Now, this was posted just shortly after the earthquake. There's no way to back up those assertions. That's what I'm saying. Officials at both locations. Officials. First off, there ain't no officials at Fukushima. They're far away from that place. It's only homeless and destitute, victims of society, immigrants who don't speak the language, and the scumbag yakuzas. The earthquake was the strongest since the March 16th quake, which of course he said the exact same thing about it. There's no damage, no injuries, official says. And there's a story coming up, 1,900 houses, 19,000 houses, there it is there. See? Told you. 19,000 houses were damaged in March 16th. Quake that they said there was no damage, nobody was injured. That's messed up, okay? That's the screwed up headline right there. The estimate is the payout is going to be about $5 billion. That was a week and a half ago or something. $5.4 billion was the payout so far at that point. But according to this story yesterday, claims are still rolling in. They got all these insurance agencies that got to collect everything before they can make these statements. So in other words, it's going to be much bigger. We know there's 1,000 places on one train track alone that need to be repaired. And we know that train 16 of the 17 cars actually derailed, despite the fact for the first 4 days they swore and they repeated it over and over that the trains didn't derail and there was no damage. They were just checking the tracks. Turns out there's 1,000 places that had to be fixed, and 16 of the 17. That's the thing, they're going to lie. No maybes, no ifs, no buts, guaranteed 100% unequivocal. Whenever they have an event, they're going to lie. All the media is going to come out and regurgitate the lie. You're going to get the same picture with the same paragraph at the same time worldwide. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you got to wait a couple of days. These are perpetual liars. And I can't remember. The train industry itself had made a statement that was really significant. Yeah, they said that the tremor was worse than the 2011 tremor. Remember that from March the 16th? They're disgusting. You can't make an informed decision when all you've done is told lies. You can't make any decisions that makes any sense with the media because they're going to lie to you. It's all public relation firms at this stage, probably for who knows how long, but certainly in the last 10 years, it's complete control. And they're actually evil, what they do. It has all the criteria by the way of terrorism, too. Over 19,000 houses in Miyagi, Fukushima Prefecture, were damaged after a powerful earthquake. Powerful! Now, these 19,000 homes are on the other side, right, the east side of the meltdown. So the earthquake had to go right past the multiple nuclear meltdowns to damage 19,000 houses. The fragile reactors had to get hit first, and these are hundreds of miles past it. But they are adamant not another single atom left that nuclear power plant. Nothing. I think it's striking how evil these people actually are, and consistently evil. They don't release anything unless it's a lie. They're a very dangerous, secretive death cult that are going to exterminate you and the species. That's all they're doing. The number is expected to increase as more effective residents apply for disaster damage certificates. In Miyagi, 219 houses were destroyed or partially collapsed. Were destroyed. And in Fukushima, 1,072 houses were destroyed or collapsed. These are huge numbers because the official story is ground zero where the earthquake comes ashore, it had no damage. And that happened to be the same place where there's multiple nuclear reactors capable of releasing huge radioactive plumes in just a matter of 48 hours. That's the kind of plume they can start pumping out. So that plume there is a 20-day model, but it's not based on the real numbers, see? That's why I say it the way I did. If you use the real numbers, everything disappears in 16 days, like France's model and a few other models. In Fukushima, we're receiving damage reports at a faster pace than those made after a strong earthquake from February the 13th last year, right, which they covered up. And that was a media frenzy for about 2 weeks of propaganda. There was 50 tanks to shift to that Fukushima site, but no damage to the fragile buildings. Well, if those tanks were actually full, they wouldn't have shifted. The March 16th quake off the coast of Fukushima measured an upper 6 to March 16th last month. An upper 6 on the Japanese seismic intensity scale of 7. And they don't even bother telling you in that sentence there, on the second highest on Japan's seismic intensity scale. So when you scale that to the Richter scale, you get a 9.6. So if that same earthquake happened here in North America, we would have called it a 9.6. Because they just call it an upper 6. Most people don't have a concept of what's going on because they don't articulate it. in some areas of the prefecture. So how big was it offshore? It left 3 people dead, 241 injured. And of course, the official story was nobody got injured and there's no damage. We're only seeing that with Japan. We're only seeing that in where the nuclear power plants are. You can't have a future when nuclear power is worth more than all of humanity and all the species. You really can't. Given last year's quake, psychological damage is greater than damage to the buildings, said a degenerate official of the tourist industries. That was a huge quake last year, by the way, that February the 13th. That was a 9.6. Utilities want to convert coal plants to nuclear. Like, if you don't come out and grovel to the nuclear once every 2 or 3 days, you'll be blacklisted from planet Earth pretty quickly. Every time you go nuclear, you talk about nuclear, you got to bend the knee, kiss the ring, and you got to swear allegiance to the devil and sacrifice your youngest. States and utilities are looking at placing small nuclear reactors that don't exist in a so far unproven way to deliver electricity. A so far unproven way to... That's being extraordinarily polite. That media was doing everything it can to try to make the nuclear industry look like it's an industry. It's not. It's some kind of sick and twisted and demented, hideous morph of inbreeding. Right? What happened was you got decades and decades and decades of these kooky whack jobs getting married to each other's kids. They're having kids, they're getting married to each other's kids in the nuclear industry. And the current generation running the nuclear industry are the entitled lot. They feel like the world owes them everything. Their parents were genocidal idiot machines, and they're determined to outdo them. Lifting West Virginia's ban on nuclear power is a positive step. Like, if I ever put out a picture and looks like that, somebody please shoot me. Just shoot me. Nuclear energy generation holds potential for West Virginia former coal plant site. Pennsylvania's officials searching for nuclear device stolen from a vehicle. Again, you see these words, officials. Apparently, when you give someone the title of an official, they stop being human immediately. It's really hard to explain it, but there's something weird happens. They stop being humans immediately. 8 millicurries. A millicurry is 1,000th of a curry. And a curry is... How do you explain it? Because you don't want to think in millisieverts, microsieverts, and unisieverts and stuff like that. You want to think of curries as atoms. So it's like 79 billion times 30 billion is a curry, atoms. It's a lot anyway, right? And a gram of cesium could have 1,000 curries or 100 curries of isotopes. It's a horrific amount. And 40 millicurries of americium-241. That's really interesting because americium has a very long half-life, decays into plutonium eventually, 241. And so they put it in all the smoke detectors, not all of them, but the majority of smoke detectors are using americium-241, which eventually decays to plutonium. And so this is a good way, instead of storing it for 240,000 years, they put it in your smoke detectors, and when it breaks, you throw it in the garbage and goes buys another one, right? So it's a disgusting industry that does stuff like that. It's really truly despicable. It's a horrific thing to do. And there's no checks and balances. There really isn't. All the regulatory agencies have been captured. Were created as captured regulatory agencies in the even worse. See, when you look at the nuclear, if you go back and look at the legacy of the nuclear industry, the first thing you notice was a very secretive industry. And secretive meaning loose lips sink ships and gets yourself the death penalty at the same time, right? The industry will jail you and everything. Back in the day, they had armed guards, for God's sakes, that were crazies as being in play. I won't bother, we got too much to cover tonight, but the DEP warned that if anyone is to find a device, they should not handle it directly. Instead, they should keep the distance and contact authorities, who I wouldn't trust with a bicycle. I wouldn't let them borrow my flashlight. They're so incompetent. A new nuclear imaging prototype detects tumors. Don't use anything the nuclear industry comes up with is the best bet. Nuclear causes the tumor, for God's sakes, and then you want to treat it using more nuclear. Man-made nuclear is the curse of 8 million species and the future of humanity. It's a death nail for us all. Was a Florida man arrested for using lost nukes to power his home? This story went viral, probably because of the nuclear industry, the lunatic nuclear industry. And then they come out and beat it down and probably introduce people to more evil nuclear. Story originated as a piece of satire. No, well, just because it went viral don't mean people believed it. It's like a politician when they go viral. It's not that anybody believes what they're saying. The video just happened to go viral. Nobody falls for it. They don't believe it themselves. Nuclear energy from U.S. and France will cut Chechia's dependency on Russia. So this is last month we're seeing this, because you got to realize who Vladimir Putin been as a dictator, right? He's been in position of authority now for 23, 24 years or something like that. He was also Justin Trudeau and Angela Merkel, many of the current, past, present, recent leaders worldwide were part of this World Economic Forum. And these are the globalist machines. These are strategists. And they do things in increments over long periods of time. And they're part of young global leaders, right? The World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, Swout, or whatever you pronounce. These are anti-human, anti-species people. And so you see the whole world all of a sudden, which, not really, but 195 countries, which were all United Nations, which is an illegal, right, sedition, what we see these leaders doing by creating this gang, right, this gang of countries. And then NATO does the same thing. It has 30 militaries. That is the military-industrial complex. That's who that is. Whenever you hear the words military-industrial complex, it's United Nations and NATO. NATO is the little puppy, the little pit bull they send out. And then the NATO country, a lot of NATO countries are United Nations also, right? Nuclear energy from U.S. and France will cut Chechia's dependency. Contract for building the first nuclear reactor in 2 decades was given to U.S. and France. France has got no experience building reactors. They got the EDF, right, which has been a flop, a total flop. All their recent reactors over the last 2 decades, none of them basically are online, are 3 to 4 times over the original estimates and have used up all the precious metals left on the planet. There are big chemtrails over the nuclear power plant. That's some sadistic looking stuff right there, man. Chemtrails over a nuclear power plant. That's some serious evil going on there. What the hell? I couldn't physically, I wouldn't get that printed out and put it on my wall because it'd give me nightmares. And it's surrounded by farms, no doubt about it, right? How can you make it more evil? Well, let's put the nuclear power plant in farm country. You're probably the same guy who came up with the idea of putting 7,500 chemicals in cigarettes and then giving them nicotine pills to kick 7,500 chemicals. How are you going to kick 7,500 chemicals with nicotine pills and patches? How does that work? If you think they don't hate you, and there's not that many of them, they can be held accountable. They can be stretched from the neck. Throw them in wood chippers. Get rid of them. Regular nuclear refueling, legally of course, right? Got to say that because it's your shit tube. Regular nuclear refueling phase. Regular nuclear refueling. To bring in around 1,000 to 1,200 people to do the refueling, these are temporary workers. Because they don't want the full-time employees getting these doses. Once they crack the reactor open, all that isotopes got to go somewhere. The fuel pools are always hemorrhaging radiation out of these facilities. That's just a gallows laugh. So it says Monday, April the 18th. At the top of it, it says April 26th, Chernobyl, today in history. It's bizarre, right? So they put this out 8 days early. Which is okay, whatever. The world's frigged up anyway. Today is Tuesday, April 26th, which is next week, by the way. The 116th day of 2022, which is Tuesday of next week. And there's 249 days left in the year, starting on Tuesday of next week, which is the anniversary of the world's second worst nuclear meltdown called Chernobyl. On April 26th, explosion and fire at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. And Ukraine caused radioactive fallout to begin spewing into the atmosphere. Spewing. That's not a word you hear from Fukushima for some reason. All you hear is leaking. Dozens of people were killed in the immediate aftermath of the disaster. Dozens. 600 helicopter pilots. 600. Every one of them died within the first couple of weeks. While the long-term death toll from radiation poisoning is believed to number in the thousands. All they do is lie. They don't know how to. They can't open their pie holes without lying. They're totally lost it. In 1968, United States exploded beneath the Nevada desert a 1.3 megaton. So Hiroshima and Nagasaki were around 15 kilotons. Nuclear device called Boxcar, which splits the earth and you get radioactive plumes coming up, which is equal to 86 Hiroshima or Nagasaki-sized nuclear weapons. 86 at the one time. So the radioactive fallout would be the same. It's disgusting, isn't it? Nuclear gauge with radioactive material is missing. Well, it's not a crime. If you get that and you take that radiation and poison somebody, it's not a crime. Because Congress lacks the authority to make it a crime to poison somebody with radiation. Now, if a Muslim does it, they'll call it terrorism, but they won't call it a crime. They'll just call it terrorism. All right, he's a terrorist. You got to send him over to Guantanamo Bay. We can waterboard him a couple of 100 times legally over there, which means they can drown you 100, 200 times. Like join the military, you get to drown people a couple of 100 times. To get them to say whatever you want them to say. If you drown me a couple of 100 times, I'll tell you I killed Elvis. Whatever you want, man. No problem. What do you want? What do you want me to confess to? The Bureau of Radiation Protection. If anybody comes up and tells me they work, even in my own personal life, I meet somebody and their husband or wife says they works for the Bureau of Radiation Protection, I'm literally going to blow up laughing in their face. They're not going to get mad because they'll realize, oh shit, he knows shit about radiation. Nuclear gauge with radioactive material missing. There was one of these was, I can't remember where it was to. It was a third world country there where they built a small apartment building. And somebody took a piece of radiation the size of a quarter or something, or $1, and put it in the wall alongside of one of the apartments and the stairways. And everybody in that apartment got leukemia and died, except for the youngest who got leukemia but survived. And turns out somebody had left some of this stuff in a wall or something. The Bureau of Radiation Protection. That's a great idea. Like, we should do something like create a Bureau of Radiation Detection and Protection. Like a real one. Not friggin' losers like this, but a real one. I think that's a pretty good idea. Hell, we should create an International Atomic Energy Agency. Like a real one, right? Was North Korea a recent weapons test to improve tactical nukes? Who gives a shit? France is out there flying around with fighter jets, nuclear straps on it, practicing all the time. America's doing it. Canada's dabbling in it. Israel is doing it. India, Pakistan, Russia, everybody's doing it. Like, the problem with North Korea was it's the boogeyman for 70 years, right? It's outrageous what they done in the United Nations. We're talking about done to North Korea. It was the United Nations went to war. Okay, police action, Dana. Yeah, where they killed several million of them, wounded 10 million of them, and then isolated them now for 70 years. Really? And now the same group is doing it to Russia, right? Did they get on Russia's border? Putin was told to attack Ukraine. Ukraine was the disposable country because they disarmed themselves like idiots a couple of decades ago. Oh, if I give you all your nuclear weapons, promise not to invade us, right? Russia, oh yeah, no problem, man. Give us your nukes. Students visit, this is disgusting story. Students visited Los Alamos National Laboratory, I think it was. Yeah, Los Alamos National Laboratory. That's outrageous. That's a huge nuclear dump. Like half the people that worked there got cancer or died of cancer. Robert J. Oppenheimer's vision, which became the mission of the laboratory, and Oppenheimer's now I have become death, the destroyers of worlds. Have I got that there? I got that there, don't I? Let me see. I know for a shorter way to find it. Ooh, come on, a little bit quicker than that. Now I have... Bear with me. I'll give it a second here. I'll get through it. Oh. Well, I got a couple of different versions. Just hang on. That'll do. Let me check the volume. Couple. There we go.
We knew the world would not be the same. Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Yeah, he did. He turned against nuclear, and then he was ostracized. The Los Alamos National Laboratory, the death factory that sits on top of one of the biggest aquifers in the United States, which is unbelievably radioactive at this stage, in Sandina National Laboratories, Albuquerque. It should be a crime to take students to these places. It's brainwashing, and a real bad type of brainwashing. Nuclear weapons are a tremendously awesome system, says Scumbag idiot. Students had the opportunity to visit a Category 3 nuclear shithole. Tech Area V, which project leader Shit for Brain David Lee taught us about the passive and active delay mechanisms the government uses to keep nuclear material safe from the bad actors. That person, he'll probably be the president of the United States someday, that despicable piece of art. Additionally, students had the opportunity to take a first-hand look at a slimy nuclear reactor. And the Notre Dame International Security Center offers the student the opportunity to visit and experience the most important places in the global community, both stateside and abroad. Nuclear shit for brain land. Right, that's a bit of a stretch to call it the most important places in the global community. They're bootlicker. Department of Political Sciences, University of Notre Dame. Might have known. Right, these really are dysfunctional people. Right, they can read out of a book, they can teach out of a book, but you take them to a party and nobody will talk to them. Anybody that does will probably go home with a headache. NDISC experiences students visit nuclear wasteland. What a betrayal, eh? And digging up the history of the family bomb shelter. For 75 years, you got your bomb shelter. And they used to play these videos, because in the old days, theaters were where most of the films would be played, right? Not TVs. And so they would play these commercials about bomb shelters, how to build your bomb shelters, where you can get the plans to do it, what you should put in it, depictions. It was really something. So here they're showing you bomb shelters in the subway systems. Digging up the history of the family bomb shelter. It started in Japan in the 1940s after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. When images of the Japanese survivors of the bombs and the cities reduced to rubble first emerged. Well, I was telling you last night, right? People were blown in Nagasaki, Hiroshima. People were blown several hundred feet up into the air in horses, because back then they used to use horses a lot too, right? And a lot of the witnesses had mentioned the animals screaming also, right? These big animals were thrown hundreds of feet in the air, or 10 or 50 feet into buildings or whatever the case may be, and were dying in just this agony along with all the people. It was really terrifying, every facet of the story. Nearly 500 million FCDA civil defense booklets depicted the all-American family in their fallout shelters, creating a key visual focal point for early conversations about nuclear war in the US of A. Family fallout shelters. Now they wanted, not just for bombs, fallout shelters. Fallout shelters. So, if you go watch these old films that now are up on the internet, a lot of it they'll be talking about, like if you're in an apartment building, where's the best spot to be? The best spot to be will be in the lobby where the elevators are in the center of the building, because the radiation can pulse right through all of these apartments. Right? That's what a fallout shelter is, to stop the radiation from pulsing through and injuring you, destroying your genetic material and your health. And so basements, because you're surrounded by dirt. The problem was, how did you avoid... Because radioactive fallout has a really bizarre property. It's actually kind of like a living thing, radioactive fallout. Just hang on. Because it's such a weird subject for people. So radioactive fallout will suspend itself because it's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. So it's able to move itself, right? And it's also able to hover right over the ground because it's so tiny. You can put 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you still can't see it. But these atoms are pulsing energy at the speed of light. And when they hit alphas and gammas and neutrons and betas, they're pulsing this energy almost at the speed of light. These pulses hit each other and changes directions. A braking effect creates this bizarre X-ray effect. Super dangerous. All of them are, right? But that's a particularly strange one. And it's enough energy to sterilize the insects, destroy bacteria and everything with replicating cells. In the 1961 episode of The Twilight Zone, a quiet dinner party turned into a community tearing itself apart as fictional suburbanites scramble to get access to the only fallout shelter in town. I can't remember that particular episode. I gotta go find that. That's the original Twilight Zone series, I would imagine. We got a poll tonight, by the way. Anybody's interested? Should nuclear professors face crimes against humanity charges for turning kids into sadistic demons? We certainly got enough evidence to say yes. What's interesting, and there's only reason I've ever seen something like this, but 44 votes and 44 thumbs up. There's usually a very big disproportion in the voting. It's usually a much higher number. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's really unusual to see that comparison. That's all. In the run-up to the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Saturday Review covered a town hall meeting in Hartford, Connecticut, which descended into chaos when a community member threatened to shoot anyone who approached his fallout shelter. He's just stating the fact. And they even put out these bizarre, when the wind blows, you ever see that? Some twisted stuff, man. That terrorized a generation of people, that one. Which is good, right? Made the industry look like the scumbag it actually is. With anti-nuclear activism heating up, the arts presented a society on fire where the fallout shelters took on a new symbolic role, futile final bastion in a world devoid of hope. A futile, like that's what they were calling, after a nuclear war, your fallout shelter was basically a futile final bastion in a world devoid of hope. So they knew way back in the 50s how evil this bloody industry is. And the industry proliferated through inbreeding because it was rejected. And now we're stuck with this completely dysfunctional inbreed group that are in positions of authority and are actually just batshit lunatics, degenerate nobodies, but they come from a crossbreed of inbreeds. Just being polite, right? It's actually much worse than that. Area Hub website shows local environmental dangers. It's an interesting story. So a new database allows users to search U.S. zip codes, city names, and even the address to learn about extreme weather concerns like hurricane or wildfire exposure and nearby environmental industrial hazards like Superfund sites, neighborhood brown fields, which are toxic dumps, or problematic nuclear reactors. I love it. Or problematic, because you don't want to live around a problematic nuclear reactor. You really don't want to live within 1,000 miles of a nuclear reactor, ideally. That's how bad nuclear actually is. It's always hemorrhaging radiation from the fuel pools on top of that. All gas are vented into the environment. These things are splitting the atoms, see? And when I say splitting atoms, it's like, oh shit numbers. Per liter. It's, oh my God, really? Like, it's shocking what the numbers we're talking about. Trillions of atoms per liter being hemorrhaged. 120,000 liters a day average per pool is evaporated into the environment worldwide from 1,000 different pools. Each pool is about 120,000 liters boiled off. Each one is saturated in isotopes because the fuel rods, the spent fuel, reactor cores, is still split in the atoms. Right? So some sites will harvest those atoms to make fuel, and they call these breeder reactors. They make fuel for other reactors. You can run a whole fleet on the isotopes that are produced from the used fuel. Do you get it? What's really going on here? So if you don't collect it and make fuel out of it, what happens to it? It's released into the environment each day, all day long. It's a genocide machine. I know the facts don't matter anymore. Pick a place. Type in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and you'll get the propaganda machine. For 3 Mile Island on the Susquehanna River, and the operation for it was only 90 days long before it was shut, March 28, 1979, after a major accident. Yeah, we missed the anniversary this year. It also showed that the island is less than 12 miles from Pennsylvania capital. Right, and so we got to do a video now on 3 Mile Island because we missed the anniversary. Did we? I can't remember. That's not like me. I'll have to check and see if we missed the anniversary this year. It also showed the island is less than 12 miles from Pennsylvania capital. 12 miles for nuclear fallout. These reactors, that melted down. Now, they admitted 2 million people got about a millisievert, 2 millisievert dose, which is 1,000 microsieverts. But that's not how you measure radioactive fallout. That's how you measure gamma shines and X-rays and neutrons. Right? That's not how you measure radiation fallout. Geiger counter, pulse and energy every second is how you measure radiation. It's physical atoms that are floating around and sequestered in your muscles, your organs, and your bones, and are pulsing energy every second for the rest of your life. Invoking a response for your autoimmune system, and typically in the form of white blood cells, which will attack that radiation intrusion into your body. It'll attack it for decades and eventually build a tumor around it. But at the same time, of course, for white blood cells to exist, you got to displace the red blood cells that are carrying oxygen and nutrition. Whatever, right? It was co-founded by the late William Pence, PhD, 89, to help consumers, researchers, and businesses. So he died recently, make informed choices. which means, like, the problem with non-profits and stuff like that is the industry will seize that as quick as they can. If the owner dies, the industry will move right in and take it over permanently. It's right away, right? All the big foundations out there are controlled by the industries now. And they don't fund people like me, right? If people don't directly donate to me, then there is no funding for people like me, right? And they know that. That's why they control these. And they'll take and just waste that money that they're getting. Well, not doing what it's supposed to do, but they'll use it for propaganda. That's what I mean by wasting it. They'll turn it into propaganda to attack any opposition to the genocide machine. So you got another professor taking over. And there's some good ones out there, but 99.99999% of them will cut your throat if the industry tells them to, right? They're zombies. They're zombies. That's why they got the job in the first place. Usually they go to university and you can't get them out of university. You get this degree, that degree, dim degrees, D degrees. And so the university says, hey, welcome to the flock. All you got to do is stab humanity in the back once in a while for the industries, particularly nuclear, and we'll give you a tenner. Once you learn your area's risk picture, consider mitigation options and take steps to prepare to reduce your family's exposure to hazards. It's a great idea. This will get destroyed, though, because it's something that's good, see? We want to inform and empower people in business. That's what Safecast said in Japan, isn't it? The exact same words. So they can make healthy and wise choices. That is the exact sentences from Safecast, like people like Despicable Asby Brown and the rest of them. Oh yeah, the renewable energy revolution will need renewable storage. Yeah, compressed air, pumped hydro. They touch on that. They actually acknowledge it, but they downplay it. They give like a blurb on that. Hang on. Maybe I'm making a mistake, but let me bring up quickly. Well, actually, nothing quick in this game, is it? So I'm going to show you compressed air storage, pumped hydro and stuff like that. Who knows what's up? Okay, hang on. This could take a moment. Okay. It's not supposed to be there. Okay. Pumped hydro can deliver 100% renewables. So they identified 500,000 places worldwide where you can pump water up a hill and with excess energy. And if the wind's not blowing, the sun's not shining, the water runs downhill. Incredibly complicated compared to a simple nuclear power plant, I'm sure. But pumped hydro and pump compressed air wind storage. So you're going to pump air down into caverns. These are just 120 psi. So you can do this anywhere. You don't need geological repositories, perfect areas to do this. You can build a cavern anywhere. You can do it in your home with cascade tanks. So last year, in November 2021, Hydrostore was planning a 3,200 megawatt, 400 megawatt compressed air storage. This was good for about 8 hours of compressed air storage power. And 50-year system with no toxic materials. So batteries can't compete with compressed air storage and pumped hydro. And you can have recirculated pumped hydro like the United Kingdom does it in a mountain, right? One of the people that watches some of my videos had messaged me and said, hey, check it out. There's one here in the United Kingdom in a mountain where they recirculate the water. And that one's good for like 6 hours, if I remember correctly. And so that one that they're doing down in the States right now has got a 50-year energy storage. And it can put out 8 hours a day of compressed air power, which is the equivalent of a coal plant energy. How to store excess wind power underwater. So they figured out a way you can also store wind power underwater. This was we covered just a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And it's pressurized. I'm not going to try to explain it, but if you're interested in that stuff, and everybody should if they're into the renewable energy revolution, so this is another way where they pump water down into the earth and it squeezes. I think that's it. Don't quote me. Hang on here. Yeah, you can see the depiction. Put water down, and it gets pressurized and heats up. Pressurized, comes back up, and you can drive a generator with it. The German word meaning dark doldrums. It chills the heart of renewable energy engineers who use it to refer to the lulls when solar panel and wind turbines are thwarted by clouds, night, and still air. Actually, it comes from sailors, right? The doldrum, where there's no wind for the sailors. In the old days, the sailors had no motors. On a bright, cloudless day, solar farm can generate a prodigious amount of electricity. When it's gusty, wind turbines whoosh neighborhoods to life, but at night, solar cells do little, and calm air turbines sit useless. Renewable energy stop renewing until the weather or the planet turns. Once again, I just showed you got pumped compressed air storage and pumped storage. But if you back that up with tidal energy, geothermal energy, and solar and wind, so if you got solar, wind, geothermal, tidal energy, and wave energy, then you got compressed air storage and pumped hydro storage. So if you use all 6 or 7, then you're good for a couple of 100 years. You can keep on top of it, right? You're better than good. That's the end of it. You have all the energy you want, and you can expand them. The dark doldrums make it difficult for electrical grid to rely totally on renewable energies. And so this argument, we hear it constantly. Now, they touch upon compressed air storage, but it's less than a half of a sentence with no punctuation to it whatsoever. And the same thing with, and they claim that there's not a lot of spots you can do to pumped hydro, but as I showed you, they identified 500,000 spots worldwide, which is more than enough. Seriously, it's more than enough. Because you can make your own. You can recirculate the water. You can use heavy mineral water, so it's more heavier. But I mean, you don't need a huge pressure. New York green lights clean energy projects, but concerns linger again because most natives, the native communities, I should say, worldwide, we've seen them disproportionately destroyed by the nuclear industry in particular, but quite a few industries. But the nuclear in particular got a tendency to really attack the native communities and lands and that. And some extreme ones where nuclear power plants are built literally right alongside of a native community. A native community has no concept of the danger from the radioactive fallout constantly in their community. Some of the bizarrest things I've ever covered was nuclear power plants like that. Energy myths are triggering a new dark age in Europe. What a piece of disgusting parasite this Brian Gitt turned out to be. He said, myth number 4, nuclear power is dangerous. And he backs it up by saying nuclear power is the safest, most powerful and reliable way to generate low emission electricity. Well, you got to have 2 external power supplies dedicated to a nuclear plant site to build it, to run it, and another 100 years to decommission it for starters. You can't have nuclear without gas, oil, and coal plants to run it, because you can't run on their own power. It's absurd to suggest that it is emission-free. It's ludicrous, really, because you're talking about something that's going to power 1 million homes. Of course it's going to have emissions, for goodness sakes. Nobody's going to be surprised that it got emissions. It's powering 1 million freaking homes, allegedly. If you can actually believe anything the nuclear industry tells you. Only about 200 people have died as a result of radiation from nuclear accidents. It was it was over 600 helicopter pilots, for goodness sakes. It's 14.2% of children across Japan, the entire country, have congenital malformations, don't need open heart surgery when they're born, or neonates. This is extraordinary numbers. Cancer rates by 2012 in Japan had rose by 865,000. There's one community there, when a single month there was an extra 12,000 heart attacks people had died by. In just a single month. Do you think that was just a normal month? Japan has been shipping over 800 million pounds of just rice from a nuclear wasteland now for 11 years. Worldwide, destroying everybody. The radioactive fallout from Chernobyl changed the sex ratio of all the males and females in Europe. You can't do that without changing the male and sex ratio, which is more males to females, which is a smaller population, which is a whole other bunch of issues, because you had to poison people to accomplish that. In 2012, it was an extra 865,000 cancers. So claiming there's only 200 people who've died as a result of radiation in 60 years. This is the problem with the nuclear industry. They're despicable. They're absolutely despicable to come out and do stuff like that. It's unconscionable to come out and pretend that there's no adverse side effects. It's absolutely unconscionable that people like that are allowed to breathe the same air, are allowed to walk on the same earth as me and you. Even if you count the cancer diagnosed among the people exposed to radiation. Well, first off, radiation kills 93% of the chemotherapy patients. Only 3% survive. I really disrespect this person who wrote this article, Brian Gitt. I really, truly think that's... It's not stupid, it's just evil. It's insidiously, monstrously, unbelievably, hideously evil. It's unbelievable. You can't go back to the graveyards every 7 years in Japan because of radiation. If you look at the study, it was repeated in 2004, originally in 1985. 3% efficiency chemotherapy treatment of cancer patients. It was actually less than that. 2.3% in Australia, this sentence right here, and 2.1% in the United States live longer with it than without it. Based on the extensive documents, it's clear to state we are losing the war on cancer. In fact, I believe that based on the clinical oncology document, it's safe to state that we have actually lost ground with our new and improved synthetic man-made chemotherapeutic agents. Man-made radiation, by the way. Granted, 3% in 1985 was horrific. All our research dollars have resulted in a negative 33% of further decreases in benefit. Perhaps everyone should contemplate and think of chemotherapy as an alternative route. They say in the study that it's better to have nothing than it is to get chemotherapy. You have a way better chance of surviving it, and you don't lose your quality of life immediately and permanently. using radiation, and I've done entire presentations on my site of just chemotherapy, all just strictly academic studies. It's just holy crap. How is it even possible? And then it claimed there's millions who die every year. It affects the coal pollution, right? So, like James Hansen, it's just really something. This person is just a disgusting. Yeah, and James Hansen too. Ah, yes. James Hansen. And James Hansen had wrote, here we go. James Hansen, man, I got so much disrespect for that guy. It's not funny. He estimated that 1.8 million air pollution caused deaths were prevented worldwide between 1971 and 2009, which is 28 years, which works out to 64,000 a year. But each nuclear power plant kills at least that many. Nuclear power, right? The radioactive fallout from the nuclear power plants, particularly the fuel pools, are hemorrhaging all day long. That's because I don't know a real word that can articulate how bad it actually is. We'll use the word hemorrhaging radiation. It's a million trillion times worse than what I'm able to articulate. There's 1,800 illnesses and diseases, not immune deficiencies and injuries from radiation. It's not just cancer. It's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. This is an incredible list of illnesses. Your immune system is compromised because of radiation in your body. Your body immune system now is more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless. Nuclear waste is a big problem. Here's another myth 5, he says. Fact, he says. Nuclear is the only energy source that prevents waste from going into the environment. My God. United Kingdom, for instance, and many other countries, but just the United Kingdom, spent 20 years taking their waste out to the ocean and dumping it actually in the ocean. Like, not hiding that fact. Just taking it out, throwing the barrels over. Anything that didn't sink right away, they shot it. Punched a hole in it. When these barrels sink, they're each 33 feet, they're under another 14.5 pounds per square inch pressure. So if they sink in a couple 100 feet of water, it's going to crush that 45-gallon drum. The lid will just peel off at that stage. The lid is crimped on. It's not welded on, see? Claiming that nuclear is the only energy source that prevents waste from going to the environment, I'd actually punch him out if I seen that guy. If he was 80 years old and he's in a fucking wheelchair, I'd probably walk up and kick him right in the fucking head. Excuse the language. That's how much I disrespect that person. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to fuck up and kick the shit out of an 80-year-old man. It's never going to happen, no matter how insidious that person was. Unless he was, never mind. Watch his face from Oxford. Nuclear crank from Oxford. I can't remember his name now. Thank goodness. But to tell those kinds of lies, I like I say, like, if I was 80 years old and he was 80 years old, I'd walk up and kick the shit out of him. Let's put it that way. I think his family should be arrested for not drowning him when he was born, personally. In fact, used nuclear fuel is not strictly waste because some advanced reactors... You piece of shit! You despicable sack of shit! Don't you dare talk about mixed oxide fuel, you disgusting maggot. He's talking about some advanced reactors can burn the fuel so it's not even waste. Michael Schellenberg must love you. James Conqueror must love you. Geraldine Thomas must love you. You're as low life as they get. Like, you can't be stupid and write these kinds of articles. You really gotta be in the nuclear industry a very long time to understand all these nuances. Could run unused, all these minutiae of the minutiae, these details of the details, could run unused nuclear fuel in the future. More than 90% of the potential energy still remains in the fuel. It's actually 99%. But it's already gone through a chain reaction. It's illegal to make the fuel in Canada and the United States because it's actually evil. It's illegal. It's illegal. It's not illegal because they're lazy. It's illegal because of the harm. And then the fuel that's left over after is just absurdness. They don't even know what to do with it. They really don't know what to do with the mixed oxide used fuel. It's so insidious. Just normal fuel from a reactor for all replicating cells, humans, animals, birds, and everything else, according to the American governments themselves, that the emissions, the radioactive isotopes from this stuff, is 1 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. And this parasite that wrote this article, this is a disgusting parasite, despicable, revolting parasite to write that article. That's the normal, though, and I apologize because I get upset because I read this shit all friggin' day, all night, all day, and sometimes I snap. But, like, he's got no worries. I'm going to go hunt him down and kick the shit out of him. There's 1,000 of these fuckers every day. Excuse the language. And that's the best I could do is come out, yell at him for 2 seconds, move on to the next scumbag, degenerate sack of shit, and call him a piece of shit, move on to the next one. Tons of the Japanese nuclear waste may be destined for overseas disposal. Now, if you come up and told me that to my face, I can't say that I won't lose my mind. I can't guarantee that. I can't guarantee that I won't try to break his neck right on the spot. I can't guarantee that, see? Because that's the same as a grizzly bear coming and trying to kill me, being that close to something that evil. Japan's nuclear power plants have over 57,000 tons of large radioactive equipment. It's 114 million pounds of equipment, not talking about Fukushima now, but just Japan, that have or will in time become radioactive. They got a lot more than that, and may be destined to be disposed of overseas. Like Taiwan cracks me up. You know what Taiwan done with their nuclear waste? Well, there's an island where they keep the natives. It's called Orchard Island. And so the Japanese or the Taiwanese government went to Orchard Island, native community, set up a meeting with them and drank a bunch of sake or shit, paid off a few people, and said, we're going to build a canning factory. And the natives on Orchard Island were like, that's cool. What can we do? Well, we need a piece of your land here to do it here. And they're like, yeah, no problem. That's great. We love that canning factory for salmon and tuna. This is going to be fantastic. So the nuclear industry then, instead of putting a canning factory there, they put a nuclear dump site there. And they put up canning factory outside of it. It takes a whole different type of evil to do something like that. And with no repercussions. No repercussions whatsoever. And you should... We're like 70 years behind the fight right now. Well, you gotta fight back at some point. Now they got us. They're exterminating everything on the planet. And time to fight back. The scale of would-be hazardous waste underscores the ongoing move within the government to re-examine a rule banning the exports of radioactive waste at a time when few municipalities are willing to accept the waste. Again, they'll do everything else, you couldn't care less. When it comes to nuclear waste, you need your permission for some reason. But once again, as I showed you last night, Congress in the United States lacks the authority to make it illegal to poison you with radiation. Because if it was illegal to poison you with radiation, they couldn't have nuclear power plants anywhere on the planet. They couldn't have nuclear weapons on the planet. They couldn't have radiation in your hospitals. They couldn't inject radiation to kill your loved ones that they call chemotherapy, which is it's the definition of evil. I showed you the solution at the beginning of the show with the t-shirts. Ban chemotherapy and give them DCA when few municipalities are willing to accept such waste. Creating an exception to the rule under the foreign exchange law would allow power companies to commission contractors overseas. Like this will make you sick. To dispose of certain types of radioactive equipment on the condition, you're going to like this one, that the radioactive equipment is recycled in the destination countries. So they can ship radioactive waste to your country, but your country has to recycle it in the kids' toys and pots and pans and forks and knives. Spent nuclear fuel casings. Like these have been bombarded with neutron and gamma showings and x-rays. They want to ship it to another country, but only under the condition that it's going to be recycled and put into the communities. Like it's a whole different level of evil. But critics say radioactive waste created in Japan should not be forced on other countries. It's not going to be forced on any country. The nuclear industry will be happy to facilitate it. Radioactive waste should be recycled domestically. The crippled Fukushima Daiichi power plant has 3,360 tons of spent nuclear fuel casings, which is 6,700,000 pounds. That's a lot of forks and knives. That's madness. The whole story is just madness. It doesn't include data on the Tokyo Electric Power Company's plant, and Tokyo Electric Power Company declined to provide the data. Really? Anybody surprised? 24 commercial reactors are due to be decommissioned in Japan by the retarded industry. Radioactive waste is expected to be buried underground depending on its pollution levels. It is virtually impossible to dispose of the waste domestically. So you're going to send it to another country, but under the stipulation that it's recycled. This is ludicrousness. Expressing hope for overseas disposal. Well, you already done that, don't you? You don't need to do it anymore. You already exported it worldwide for 11 years straight. It's still hemorrhaging editor. The Utah-based company, Energy Solutions Corporation, U.S., officials expressed confidence it can process not just 3 types of large reactor equipment under consideration for export, but other waste like metals from the Fukushima plant. Nagasaki University professor, Nagasaki, of course, is built on a nuclear bomb crater, same as Hiroshima, so that the nuclear academics can study them like guinea pigs, and their professors can pump out endless amounts of them, which is why we got a poll tonight. Should nuclear professors face crimes against humanity charges for turning kids into sadistic demons and releasing them on the unsuspecting species and populations of planet Earth? I got 55 votes with 95% of resounding hang them from the highest cliffs. Now, South Korea decided to poison the population, and by joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement with a degenerate scumbag nuclear industry at the wheels, at the helm, on Friday. To join a mega free, it's not a free trade, you got to poison everybody in your country all day, every day, for the rest of their lives, with every single meal from food from a nuclear wasteland. Go trade with somebody else, you lazy idiot. Oh, look, Canada's in there. Of course it is. And Australia and New Zealand's in there too. Canada's in there. And Australia's just... What Australia has been doing to its population, it's unbelievably sadistic. It's incredibly evil what Australia and New Zealand has got done. Canada was the first ones to open the border, so I shouldn't say jack shit, I'm from Canada. Canada started importing food after 93 days, after Meltdowns started. They're still going strong. Canada lifted restrictions on all of Japan. Just ship it to Canada. Nobody else will take it. We don't care. Make everybody in Canada sick. We couldn't care less, the nuclear industry said. Nuclear industry here in Canada went to war against every person in Canada. That's genocide to do that, to ship in food with no restrictions. Well, 55 countries banned it from 14 prefectures on top of that. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is the renegotiated version of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, led by the former scum, degenerate, moron Barack Obama. The government has said it plans to submit the application before President Moon Jae-in's 5-year term ends on May the 9th. So the outgoing Prime Minister of South Korea, before he walks out the door, signs off on it. Yeah, go ahead and poison everybody in my country. What's in it for me? The government has carefully reviewed joining the Pacific Partnership Trade Organization over the past 8 years. And the entry decision was made after considering its economic and strategic values, said the trade minister. Well, what about poisoning the population with food from a nuclear wasteland, sir? Do you deserve to be called a sir? Are you actually a human at all? Aren't you really some weird species from another planet? Because a human wouldn't do what you're doing, you disgusting parasite. You despicable, horrific parasite, sir. Farmers opposed the move. Fishermen opposed the move, citing potential damage to the agricultural fishery sectors. According to the governments, the market opening is likely to cause production in the agricultural sector to fall $358 billion US per year for 15 years in South Korea, because Japan will fill up the gap with radioactive food from a nuclear wasteland. See? Completely out of control, this industry, the social engineering, whatever you want to call it, is now the most dangerous thing in human history, much more dangerous than a meteorite coming out of our planet, the nuclear industry. Trade Ministry also made it clear that joining the agreement does not mean South Korea would lift a ban on the imports of seafood. I couldn't care less about the seafood. I'm worried about all the farms in a nuclear wasteland. I'm worried about the seafood too, but my God, they're prolific in the production of food, because Fukushima Prefecture was the breadbasket of Japan, well, of the Asian countries rather, China included. China, Taiwan, the Philippines, North Korea, South Korea. From Japan's Fukushima and Russia. Seafood. Dirty scumbags don't mention farms at all. Look at that. The great hydrogen swindle. Green gas is not what it seems. An effort to show the world how keenly it's embracing CO2 emission targets. That's what I mean. Right, they put together, like, this all came from the 2015 Paris Accord, and Paris just said we're getting rid of the renewables to promote nuclear. Don't want competition. Electric car might be fun to drive, but it's expensive because of the inferior energy density of the batteries. Petrol equivalent will always be lighter, go further. Nor at the end of the day will an electric vehicle be able to boast any CO2 emissions savings. We know that thanks to Volkswagen. Right, like they're trying to convince you that if everybody got electric cars, that'll help the climate change. Like, this is madness. There's nobody at the wheel, right? There's just this agenda that they probably cooked up 50 years ago. Every day, manufacturers and industry are working on a new kind of hydrogen initiative. Like, hydrogen is one of the most carbon-intensive things in human history, is what they're able to quantify at this stage. Rolls-Royce, JCB, the government has a hydrogen, they're talking about the UK, I guess. Climate Change Committee thinks hydrogen, Climate Change Committee. These are full of industrial goblins, military industrial complexes, goblins. And pure hydrogen doesn't exist. It's everywhere, it's nowhere. You've got to generate the hydrogen you're going to use. It requires a lot of energy. And hydrogen's physical properties create a whole range of unique problems. A tiny atom easily escapes confinement. And keeping it captive for storage is expensive because you got to liquefy it, which is minus 200 plus degrees. And so Japan built a hydrogen carrying ship for Australia. That caught fire right on its first voyage. Solving it will be somebody else's problem, they reckon. Individually, none of the factors make hydrogen as an energy carrier or storer impossible. They describe the plans to replace our gas boilers with hydrogen boilers as pretty much impossible. And right on cue, Australia's first hydrogen-carrying ship set sail for Japan and burst into flames on its maiden voyage. Australia's first hydrogen ship. Again, hydrogen-powered transport is not impossible, it's just hampered by reality. Liquefied hydrogen may be light as petrol or kerosene, but keeping at minus 257 degrees Celsius requires heavier apparatus. And green hydrogen may be generated reliably and cheaply using high-temperature gas-cooled nuclear reactors that the Japanese have been refining for 2 decades. Japan's first HTGR reactor, high-temperature gas-cooled reactor, opened in 1997, but incredibly was out of commission for a decade. Well, it's no big surprise. We see this all the time worldwide, where they do these experimental reactors. They melt down and then they hide it. A reactor? What reactor? The history of nuclear energy is full of such stories on top of that. Using hydrogen remains the worst way of doing almost anything. Quite the beatdown. Special interest groups, however, have discovered the magic word net zero, which is Miles Allen, have the same incantory power as Open Sesame in Arabian Nights. The Fays open up a cave full of treasure. Here they open up an unlimited trove of research grants, subsidies, and tap into the abundance buckets of ill-directed green capital. No, this is all about, like, no matter how kooky the idea is, they'll jump on it, as long as it's not storage for renewable energy. So if you want to create something that doesn't exist, it's better to do that than create something that's going to work. In other words, so they give you, we got wind and we got renewable or solar, but they claim there's no storage. And so they're trying to develop their bizarre batteries when you can use pumped hydro, compressed air, but you can back it up with 24-hour energy like geothermal, tidal energy, wave energy. There's actually many other different types of energy out there. I always felt that if you had a polymer for solar power that you can spray the roof of a house and connect it as one big battery, right? But you can also, if you can create trees that were solar collectors, so they look like trees, but they're actually solar panels, but are the shape of a tree. And of course, the tree is full of all of these leaves that are capable of collecting energy. That would be the ideal solar energy, wouldn't it? Because it's aesthetically pleasing. It looks like a tree. And it is able to collect, no matter which way the sun is shining, it has a large percentage of it is capable of absorbing energy from the sun, right? That's because a tree is the perfect design for collecting energy from the sun, right? That's what a tree does. And then uses that to create a hydraulic effect to suck water with nutrients up and distribute it throughout the whole system. 1,000 rally in Tokyo to protest the government plan to release the treated water into the ocean. Well, the tanks are empty. The idea of the tanks was to trick people into thinking they weren't killing the Pacific Ocean. Because you can, like a normal reactor will fill up all the tanks 6 times every day. So they only got 1,000 tanks. But they had 1,000 tanks in 2013. They got 1,000 tanks in 2022. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty suspicious to me. I'm not trying to be a smarty pants or nothing. I'm just saying, right? How can you have, and I'll just walk you through it because it's pretty freaking bizarre. But Dana, it's the nuclear industry. Everything's bizarre. I know. Just give me a chance here. So, August the 20th, 2013, they got 1,000 tanks. March the 10th, 2014, they got 1,200 tanks. 2017, they got 900 tanks. Try walking like this guy here with both feet flat on the ground. See how it works. See if you can do it. Winner gets 5 buckets of horse shit. You got to bring your own lid. In 2019, they had, you guessed it, 1,000 tanks. And in 2021, last year, they have, you guessed it, 1,000 tanks. In 2022, you guessed it, 1,000 tanks. Got 1,000 tanks in 2013, 1,000 tanks in 1,200 tanks in 2014, 900 tanks in 2017. Somebody's not being honest. It's been 11 years since one of the worst nuclear disasters, one of the world's worst nuclear disaster. How is it that every single journalist on the entire planet worldwide knows to paraphrase that exactly like that? How is that possible? That's pretty special, isn't it? Not going to say Fukushima is the worst nuclear disaster under any circumstances. In fact, by the way evolution is going towards this subject, in another few years, Fukushima will have no melter reactors. It never happened. You watch. And residents in Fukushima continue to face challenges. Over 2,000 people gathered in Tokyo to protest against the so-called irresponsible action by the Tokyo Electric Power Company. See, the idea is to get you to think about what might happen, not what has happened. The ELP system didn't work all the way up. We got documentation all the way up until the end of 2014. They couldn't get near it once they turned it on. The filter was so radioactive they could never get near it again. Japan's population dropped by the largest figure since 1950. The 11th straight year of decrease. Really? 11 years since Fukushima nuclear meltdown, Japan's population has dropped? Yeah. Wow. I'll smurf that up. Hang on. A falling birth rate and 11 straight year. A new research institute to open their Fukushima nuclear power plant next year, which will increase the population now around Fukushima, see? They don't miss nothing, these crazies, though. The area devastated by a nuclear accident, might as well call it a nuclear event, will host an international research educational institute in April of next year, come hell or high water, which would significantly boost the population around, again, you see this word crippled. I showed you the pictures of the building earlier. The buildings don't even exist anymore. Hundreds of researchers are expected to work on 5 areas, including energy, robotics, which is interesting, right? You got Harvard and Yale and Stanford and Oxford, MIT, all the big major universities. None of them got a robot. You know, I used to always cover the headline. I used to have it. I got it there even now, but I can't remember the words to it. Where school children are creating robots that could someday work at Fukushima. Because Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Oxford won't answer the phone. Oh, and agricultural. That should frighten the daylights out of you, that people like that actually exist on planet Earth. Around the cripple nuclear, it's not cripple, it's destroyed, you disgusting parasite that wrote that word. Decided on the outline of the organization on March 29th of this year, which is the day after 3 Mile Island anniversary. The facility will likely be built around Tokyo Electric Power Company's Fukushima #1 nuclear power plant, which is the Daiichi plant, with the multiple nuclear meltdowns, by the way. I don't know about you, but evil is being polite. While it will work with the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is United Nations. United Nations has an agency for everything on this planet. They've taken over your planet. George Bush calls them the New World Order. While it will work at the International Atomic Energy Agency. Where have they been for the last 11 years, for starters? Why are they so disgusting, number 2? And why don't they jump off a cliff and do the world a favor, number 3? The local population will increase 30 to 40% due to the migration of some 5,000 people in connection with the Institute. An institute of pure evil. Evil researchers working on selected subjects like radioactive materials at the prefectural offices of the Japan Atomic Energy Agency, which is another capture regulatory agency, the National Institute for Quantum Science and Technologies, and the National Institute for Environmental Studies, that took the bags of radiation, split them open, done that into a no-go zone, an evacuated community, and growing food in it. That one, the environmental studies. Discussions will also begin over a consolidation of another robot research facility set up by the industry ministry and the prefecture into the institute. In other words, we're not going to do jack shit. We're going to bring in a bunch of useful idiots and figure out another way to destroy all of humanity. Post-3/11 disaster spending to focus on nuke accident and mental care. Mental care. Because they say it's all radiophobia. Because you can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or feel it or touch it or pick it up. Therefore, it doesn't exist, Dana. There's not 3 meltdowns, a triple meltdown, it's 4. And it's 8 fuel pools that caught fire, blew up and caught fire, disappeared. Providing psychological cure. Like, you people should all be grabbed and stuck into a psychological cure with a drip in your arm in a rubber room for the rest of your lives. Preferably you go to jail for crimes against humanity, but hey. By fiscal 2021, about 31 trillion yen have been spent on building roads and coastal embankments, as well as reviving farmlands. Like, if you look at the history of what they've done, like we do all the time, we keep it front and center, which, like, see, I don't actually, how do you put that? I'm not able to do anything else than cover nuclear because it's such a horrendous, just frightening industry of genocide and ecocide and omnicides. Every facet of nuclear is designed to exterminate all the species on the planet. And they're backed up by enormous monolithic amount of institutions and foundations and government agencies worldwide. When you take on this subject, you got to realize that, you know, it's not David versus Goliath. It's an ant versus the universe trying to be rational. It's absolutely distraught how evil the people are. You can't have a real conversation with these people. Because they've never been challenged. Nobody's ever done a nuclear talk show, per se, where they told the truth. It's never been done. So what I'm doing is like the taboos of taboos when it comes to nuclear. They're like, what? He told the truth. That son of a bitch told the truth. They're out there all the time. That's how they see me, right? That blood of a bitch is telling the truth. We gotta stop that. That's criminal. He can't tell the truth. It's nuclear, for God's sakes. The negative publicity and rumors that have hurt fishermen and murdering farmers. Farmers should all be shot in Japan, particularly in the nuclear wasteland of Fukushima Prefecture. The need for psychological cures demonstrated by people still being certified as having died indirectly from the natural disaster. Well, that's worldwide. People are dying worldwide from radioactive fallout. All species are. You soulless, heartless idiot, you friggin' machine, you zombie, you. You can't call it a natural disaster. You built it on a fault line where they have up to 5,000 earthquakes a year, where you knew there was huge tsunamis eventually going to come in there. There's nothing natural about it. And you put all the reactor cores at the top of the building. There's nothing natural about that. Those people are still alive today that come up with that design. They should definitely be arrested and prosecuted for what they got done. Radiation still hitting the flora and the fauna in the forest. Still remains relatively high compared with residential areas because they don't clean up the forest. They only clean up 3% of the land. They didn't clean it up. In fact, in the farmlands, all you do is flip the soil over. The whole story is crazy. On a chilly night in early February, Suzuki hauled a black plastic bag containing 4 macabre monkey carcasses into his lab at Tohoku University. The monkeys were killed as agricultural pests in a nuclear wasteland. The 4 dead macabres were given to Suzuki by farmers. This is the worst words you can hear, farmers, in a nuclear wasteland. Who destroyed the animals several hours earlier in Nami. Farmers in Nami, yeah, that's right. About 4 kilometers 4 kilometers, these farms are 4 kilometers from the crippled nuclear plant. As I showed you earlier, these are not crippled. These are gone. They're completely destroyed. So 4 kilometers away from multiple ongoing nuclear meltdowns, the farmers are killing the only animals left. Parts of Nami are still off limit due to high radiation levels, but they're farming there. The high radiation doesn't respect fences. Nuclear meltdowns are still ongoing. So it's 4 kilometers away from a crippled nuclear plant, and parts of it is still off limit due to high radiation. And the farmers, my God, boy. Isn't that something? There goes the battery. I guess it's time for me too in that case. I'll finish with this story. In the nature-filled areas that have not been decontaminated, the nature-filled areas, there's not nature-filled areas. These got random migratory animals that come through there, but most of the indigenous population was exterminated in the first year. The macaques continue to be exposed to radioactive materials by feeding on polluted fruits and other food sources that the farmers are growing. Fruit and other, it's just all. When they were writing this story, they were drunk, obviously. They would never release the story if they read it. Up to 40,000 becquerels per macaque captured in Nami in 2013. Now, they're only checking for gamma, right? They're checking for cesium. They're not checking for the real isotopes. I'm not laughing. That's the gallows laugh. The whole story is nutty. Cesium, radioactive cesium. Cesium passed through the food chain. Cesium, we're traveling through the food chain. Cesium. So they're not honest at all. If you're only going to study gamma, you're not going to study alpha, beta, neutrons, then you're not. This is the very reason that I asked a question in my poll tonight. Should nuclear professors face crimes against humanity, charges for turning kids into sadistic demons? That's why we got that poll tonight. With 59 votes and 56 thumbs up, will help to predict this long-term movement and lead to improved uses of resources in the mountain forest and the rebuilding of agricultural in the contaminated areas. Right, that's as Freudian as it gets. They're acknowledging it's contaminated, and rebuilding of agricultural in a nuclear wasteland is how it should really read. At the Tokyo University of Agriculture. Like, if you eat anything from Japan, you're insane. If you feed it to your loved ones, you're a criminal. Feed it to your children, you should be arrested for child abuse. Rice field, grasshoppers. In Lydia, a village west of the stricken nuclear plant that still has some off-limit areas like Nami. So you get on a bus, you go there, and it's like, don't cross the road over there because that's bad. That's radioactive. You're like, well, really, what? It's like they're claiming that it's only external, that you don't get it into you. Like, the only way to describe the industry is kooky. These are kooky as they get. They're devoid of any humanity whatsoever. Cesium. You guessed it, cesium. Remains on the ground even after rainfall. Plants rarely absorb cesium. Through their roots. This is madness to suggest that plants don't suck up potassium, which is how cesium acts. It's absurd. Right now they're claiming that plants don't have potassium, is what they're saying. This is just madness to say that. Cesium. And researchers, also known as criminals and mass murderers and cowards, cesium. So they're claiming that, as for spiders, which is really interesting you brought that up, because spiders are missing here on the East Coast and the West Coast in the forest. The spiders that are eating bugs that have high cesium levels, again, cesium, really, the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rods is curium. And curium need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium, because they feed on contaminated dead leaves mixed with contaminated soil. Lying comes natural to these people. Again, like, I have to pick up at this story for the next time we get into this. Radioactive waste stuck at 830 sites with nowhere to go. Again, this was downplaying. I'm not going to cover this. That's the end of the... Tonight my voice is shot. My legs are killing me because I haven't stopped for so long. Like a decade now or something. I'm literally busted up at this stage. We got a lot accomplished. I must admit, though, in the last... Well, we were on a research expedition for the last week. And the truth is completely different than the official narrative, of course. It's just an absurd amount of work we got. My whole body's aching. I'll probably feel better when I wake up in the morning, hopefully. There's actually 150,000 sites in Japan originally where they stored radiation. It was actually over 600,000 sites, 640,000 I think it was, that they cleaned up, because we cover that pretty regularly. And that around 12,000 of them sites, the radiation numbers didn't change. You can't clean it up, right? It can't be cleaned up. They picked up soil in 3% of the land in Fukushima Prefecture and a few surrounding areas outside the prefecture. The other 93% or 97% of the land, they did nothing to it. So every time it rains or the typhoons comes through there or snow, heavy winds will shower the cleaned up areas right away. The numbers usually double within a week because you got all this fresh radiation coming in through it. They're only measuring for gammas, not measuring for alphas and neutrons or betas. Stephen Young says no spiders in Las Vegas. Wow. Unbelievable, isn't it, boy? Yeah, the whole story's a freaking nightmare, but that's why we do it. The truth has to prevail. We're going to close the poll down in the next minute or something. Should nuclear professors face crimes against humanity charges for turning vulnerable kids into sadistic demons? It's a pretty good poll, actually, 61%. So, oh yeah, for sure. Let me see. So there's links at the very bottom for T-shirts. We put up some new T-shirts. The links is below for that. Save the Whales, ban nuclear power plants. And those are pictures I took myself on an expedition which showed an extinction event from Vancouver to British Columbia. And let me carry this over here, and that way I can't screw this up tomorrow. I'll copy paste that 5 times, and so when I'm scrolling, I'll see it, and I'll say, oh, that's where I pick up is on the other side of that right here, right? But Fukushima radioactive fallout is global warming. That is global warming. We got through a lot of the news tonight. I'm not going to do a shout out tonight. I'll go to bed, go straight to bed, because it's almost 12:30. It's 12 midnight, right, at my time. So it's been a long, long day, a good day. We got a lot accomplished. I want to end it on. I just want anybody that's new here, we done research expeditions out to British Columbia on the coastline year after year. Year after year after year, doing species counts for 4 to 5 months at a time. And it's a lot of work, and you can fill the beach up with people. They're all me, that's just me freaking around. I took that's before, and this is after, the same place. It's an extinction event. It wiped out all the species, and went back year and after year. They didn't return. There's a few species left, and they're very. It was decimated. The species that were left, there was around 100 total for the whole coastline, and none of them were healthy. There was no pictures like that. You'll never take the pictures to the left again. I would find 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of a species, and we would call that, well, that species is still up there somewhere, little pieces. But after going back year after year, right, we could quantify the assertions that it's an extinction event, that these species do not exist anymore. Because we went there and done the research for 4 to 5 months a year, year after year. We were coming home on the ocean, lost for months at a time, just meandering through 27,000 islands that were all naked. It was probably the most boringest thing I've ever done in the history, was go up there because there's nothing to take a picture of, right? It's all gone. And so that's all married up with GPSs and everything else. But it was usually like this. It was usually miserable. Usually soaking wet and frozen. And which, you know, like I just came back from an expedition. And so you come back into the studio after being out on research expeditions. And it's literally like the Twilight Zone, because it's such an extreme. You're going from one extreme, and then you're back in the studio, and you got showers and heats and lights, and we had a major mass die-off of seabirds on this coastline that has got me freaked out. I'll do a quick shout, I suppose. Peaceware, Port Angeles, Dana Nasana, thank you again. James Lusa, hi James. John Doe. Timber Traveler. Albert. Good night, everybody. Patrick. Obsolete Optics. Lots of people dropped by tonight. Peaceware. I think I already showed it out. Jonathan Moreno. Good night, everybody. Don Vincent. Shane Clark. Kevin Blanche. Starlight. Well, don't make hydrogen because it's so labor intensive, energy intensive. That's why you don't want to do that. Remind everybody that your t-shirts below you can buy to help. Even though I got those prices dropped down. But that's how you start a conversation, get the conversation started. And The last two links are the only way you can donate to me, is directly to me. Both of those links we've been using for years. It's never been an issue. Conrad, Felix, hi. And Chet, Austin. Diana, Sunshine Wolf. Tired and fettered them. Yeah, I agree. Wholeheartedly, too. Let me just... So yeah, we had lots of people pop by in the comments section. We're almost down through to the recent comments. Richard, the wise person, thinker, hope everybody has a great night, great day tomorrow. Great. Like, this is Earth's Last Stand, what we're doing here. Scavilla, hi everybody. Yeah, I'm pretty tired. I'll be okay when I wake up in the morning, hopefully. Stephen Young, God bless you, Stephen, my friend. Thank you. I'm going to end a poll here right now. 52 votes. 62 votes, 95%. Should nuclear professors face crimes against humanity charges? Yes, indeed they should. I'm going to end that poll. Poll is in the Richard, Peaceward, Dana Nasana, Conrad, Stay on Tuna, Kevin Blanche, Victor, Christopher Leiber, Michael Allport, wow, everybody's shown up. Yeah, don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you can. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Oh, well, we'll see everybody. Tomorrow night is Thursday. No, tomorrow night's Wednesday. I'll get it together. It'll take a few days before I get my brain to work again, but I'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. Just give me 1 second here. I got to go down and click on the allow embedding. Click. And then save that so that in case anybody wants to embed the video, it'll play, right? Because Google always turns that off the minute I go live. Because Google hates my guts. And trust me, there's no love lost. I hate Google's guts. Cork that. Thank you, brother. God bless you. Quick double check. Yeah, I think I got everybody. Let's call it a night. It was a good show. Tons and tons and tons of documentation. Absurd amount of documentation. See everybody tomorrow night. God bless everybody. Thank you for spending your time here. It's incredibly appreciated. Have a great night, great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Take care. Yeah, thank you, wise person. Good night, Annie, Archie, Obsolete, everybody else. God bless. Take care, folks.